Hey, welcome back for another episode of the Fleet Success Show. I'm your host, Josh Turley, and joining me today, I have the privilege and honor of getting to talk with a dear friend of mine, Mr. Dan Zenger, who's currently, what's your title over there, Dan? We're at City of Vancouver.
Fleet Superintendent.
Fleet Superintendent. All right. I was going to say Fleet Manager, but, everybody's got a little bit different title.
It carries the same weight.
Yeah, but so I've known you for many years. I want to say probably since I first started at RTA, or at least very shortly after that. From the time you were at City of Walla Walla and City of Longview, and now over at City of Vancouver. And it's been for me, it's been a privilege and honor just getting to know you and being able to talk with you. I consider you somebody that is a dear friend in the industry. With that, I'm going to give you just a couple minutes. You want to just tell people a little bit about who you are and what you kind of have going on over there at Vancouver, because I know one of the things that I've really appreciated about you is your focus on culture. And every time I talk to your team, for people who don't know you, it's hard to convey this, but the amount of love you have for your team and the people that serve with you. But in your own words, I guess, tell me a little bit about your career, your history, and how you got to where you are today.
Well, thank you, Josh. Yeah, it's been a pleasure and an honor to being your friend and being around you and your family and RTA and visit them over the years. I've been fortunate to have pretty much over my 30-year career as a fleet professional. As you pointed out, let me take it back in time. I spent about 10 years in the city of Walla Walla, where I was introduced to the fleet program, and then was moved to a fleet manager's position in the city of Longview, Washington. I was there for 10 years, and then moved down here to the city of Vancouver for the last 5 years. I started as a technician, just like we all did, somewhere dinking around with mechanical stuff. I lived in Pendleton, Oregon, and so farm equipment and tearing things apart. And then that just kind of led into my enjoyment of getting my hands dirty. I may not have liked putting them all back together, but, so that really gives me the history of that. And on top of that, being a part of municipalities, it has introduced me to other fleet groups and that have helped me progress in my career. Okay. That leads me to where I'm at here. 5 years now with the City of Vancouver. We're moving forward with the operations that we're kind of struggling, and we can talk about that, later on in a broadcast, perhaps, Josh. But I remember talking to you for the first time as a tech online when you were a technician once, twice. So anyway, that hopefully that gives enough intro into my background.
Yeah, that definitely is a throwback to those conversations. They're calling me up on when I was in tech support. That's how I got my start. Yep, so. Yep. And I definitely agree. It's always easier tearing stuff apart than it is to put it back together. I don't know what it is, but there's just something about putting it back together. I always seem to break something when, especially dealing with trim pieces or something like that. I always seem to snap stuff off. So, what kind of inspired this conversation today? Right, is we know the 100 best fleets applications just opened up, about 2 weeks ago. And we're hoping to help other readers who might be on the fence or maybe haven't gone through the process before, help them, our listeners, understand what's involved in it, help get them off the sidelines and get them to apply. And anything we can do to kind of help destigmatize that process, maybe, convince them to come in and just try it, what's in it for them, kind of a thing. And so I wanted to, kind of go through, and you've done this several times. I know because I've seen your name on the list several times. But if you could give like an overview, we'll call it like the 50,000 foot overview. What goes on like for the application process for you? How do you go through that process? Is it a big lift, a small lift? Like what does that look like for you guys?
So let me back up a little bit. We'll talk about just that. The application process for me, when I first applied, first of all, I heard about it. As a young fleet supervisor back in the late '90s in the city of Walla Walla time, I've heard about it. That's what's kind of introduced. And so, at that point, it was just kind of new. There's so much going on, trying to understand my my role as a fleet supervisor and a fleet manager for the city of Walwall, so to speak, um, I went to the website. So here's what I'm recommending going forward for anybody that hasn't done this. Go to the NAFA website. There are 12 criterias there that are outstanding criterias that would help you monitor, keep a pulse on your fleet. So what I did was I just, without knowing, you know, how to fill them out and put the answers on, I would copy that over into Word document. So I copy that over to Word, and then you spend time just mulling that over. You know, whether or not you put in or not, play with that. And then again, later in life, Longview, I was there for the 10 years. You know, I was fortunate enough to be recognized twice out of the time I was there. And then using that same methodology, it allowed me to bring it down here to the city of Vancouver, where the last 5 years we've been recognized 4 times out of that. But each time in those criterias, it has allowed me as a fleet manager and my team to really keep a pulse on operations to enhance that, to better it, to put goals together. Again, whether or not it is your goal to apply or not, you can take advantage of those 12, I think 12 or 10 or 12 criteria.
Yeah, I think it's 12.
Help be a pathway to your operations to help you steer that ship. Because a lot of times fleets have a, look at it as a ship, and someone's got to be steering it. It's fleet, right? It's a fleet manager, it's a fleet supervisor, it's your team, right? If not, you're going to be bobbing around like the Titanic, and you could crash into an iceberg.
Well, I think
so
you as a fleet manager,
my first recommendation is get those out so you can play with them, read them, fill them out as though you're going to apply. But you may not because like I found out there's, hey, these criteria I don't feel like I at that point yet. I'll throw in an application.
Yeah. Well, and I think you said it right, but as the fleet manager, like you have to kind of keep your hand on the wheel, but that means you've got to have eyes out looking forward to make sure that you're not going to crash the ship. Right. And these criteria kind of help you steer and figure out where should you be focusing on and that kind of thing. So would you start that like a year ahead of time, or, like how early in the process were you looking at it?
Well, what I would recommend is as soon as, if you get your hands on the copy of that, I would do sooner than later. Okay, so for example, the window just opened, go online right now, December 6th. And you can copy that over and start working away. You've got till the end of January to fill that out, or at least just make a decision with you and your team to fill that out. Right. Like I said, even if you don't, you have that already in your arsenal of tools to look at throughout the year and to work on. So make that your goal, because there again, you start your goals for your fleet, right, from some of those criteria. Right?
Okay.
So it's a good thing for all fleet managers and fleet leadership to have a pulse on their operations, because fleet is the hub. Everything kind of comes to fleet for direction, and it's good for your team and yourself to at least have a pulse on it in a direction, so you can come up with those answers. And also it provides numbers. Everything right now is a data-driven lifestyle, right?
Right.
I didn't see that years ago. It wasn't as prominent as it has been the last 4 or 5 years, say 10 years. But this helps drive some of that analysis in your numbers and your that you need to have in your hip pocket, at least ballpark estimates. But to go into meetings where I've been kind of thrown out at the last minute, say, hey, how many miles have we traveled in here? If I'm in a police meeting or something like that. Well, that's a basic number because of what we're talking about. And just keeping track of it.
Do you find that as you've gone through that application process, right, you've got these 12 criteria in front of you, has it helped you like articulate more to council or, to other stakeholders what's going on in fleet, what you guys are working on, how you're doing? Even without applying for it, but
right. It actually does. It brings credibility to your operations and your thought process and your methodology that you're bringing, because of what you do. Because everything in a municipality, right? We want to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars. this is exactly the fence that we want to put around that. So we can say we are doing all we can. We're making the right steps to purchase the items, parts, new vehicles, etc. We're looking at different contracts, different ways that's best for the organization. Teaming up with procurement, for example. And making sure we understand the auditor's part of this and what keeps us out of auditor issues. So there's a lot of things that this brings to the table, but it does bring that unity and teamwork within your organization.
Yeah. Is the from an applications perspective, right? You've got those 12 criteria. Would you say it's like, is it intimidating? Is it hard to come up with answers to that, or is it hard to keep it with it? Because it's like a 400 character limit, if I remember right.
Yeah, I would.
Is that the hard part? Is being brief?
The hard part is I believe once you get going, like I did, before you long, you kind of start typing like you talk, and it's very hard to stay under 400 characters. The nice thing about that is you can elaborate a little further on the essay part, because it gives you like 4,000 characters. So I really recommend taking a stab at it.
Throwing in a word.
Time, it won't be intimidating. You'll be able to knock it out with no problem.
Yeah. I think that would be hard for me, right? It's like, I'll just start typing away, like typing like I talk.
Right.
And then, okay, now I need to cut this back. What do I need to cut? Right. And so I almost take it and say, and I think you could probably do this with ChatGPT too, but take that and say, okay, now turn this into like bullet points, 400 characters or less, and it should translate it for you, and come up with the high points.
So everything you just said about a bullet point, I did that 2 years ago for the purpose of kind of ironing out, or at least putting a mapping process out for the application. I just went through and just sat down, and before long I had a page and a half, almost 2 pages worth of bullet points of how, what we have done as a team and how we've accomplished that, and the data that's behind that, just to give bullet points to help build that application.
Yeah. And if you're listening, you can hear it already, right? Every time that Dan talks about this, he's talking about his team, which I think it's a testament to you as a servant leader, and just as an amazing leader for your team, as it does take the team to kind of help buy in, right? You as a leader can kind of start it and set the tone, but I love that you've involved them in this.
You don't have to run it yourself. I mean, your team is not only my management team, but my technicians, then it's my fleet analysts, or public budget staff, the procurement downtown. I mean, you've got a huge array of team members that make up the fleet success.
Do you help them? Do they help you with actually filling out the paperwork, or do you ping them for answers? And what do you guys think on this? And they kind of contribute to the answer.
Exactly. In fact, I was just talking to Jake, who's on the other side of the wall. He's my fleet analyst, fleet acquisition analyst, and we were talking about very same different topic, but very close to this. Where reach out to the public works finance analyst, put her eyes on. So yes, as I've gone through and put my application together in draft form, that's the other reason why I recommend pulling this off in Word, because then you've got draft forms, you can pitch it around. And yes, I will pitch it to other team members we talked about, because especially if I'm trying to put some analysis together with some data, I would like to have the person I work with. So Jake and I and Amanda, for example, we get her eyes on it, get others involved with that, so that when you are recognized, it's not me as a fleet manager being recognized. It is a team recognition with that. It's a true team recognition.
Yeah. So I think you kind of mentioned this, but how many times have you applied over the years? It sounds like you've applied 4 times over at Vancouver, 5 times.
Right. I've applied 6 times. One of those was for the Green Garage application, so we were recognized in Green Garage. The other ones were for 100 Best Fleet. And there's a few years that I chose not to apply because I just feel like I was ready. I had other things on my platter, because it is a little time consuming. You got to take the time to set aside and fill out 12 criterias, which is why it's really important that as you go through the year and keep a pulse on this, put some KPIs together, put some data together, so that you've got, at least a good plan of attack on these 12 criteria. You can quickly come back, easily come back, reference them, and put those down on your application.
Yeah. So it sounds like starting early is definitely a big help. And if anybody's kind of on the fence right now, this is your first time doing it, obviously the application's open now. It's due by January 26th. It might be a little bit of a crunch, but if you can carve out, how long do you think it takes you? Like if you were to sit down and hammer out an application, like a full day?
Oh, yeah. To me, I want to ponder a lot more. So it takes me maybe a week if you sit down sometimes. But some people can just quickly just type it out and be pretty good, in a day. It doesn't take that long. It shouldn't take that long. It's just
if it takes you longer than that, you're probably thinking about it too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll go home and think about it, or I'll send it to take it home and have my wife put her eyes on it, just because she's that kind of a person in what she does with her work. She does a lot of policy reading and creating. So,
that's interesting. Well, and that might be interesting too. Like if you're a first timer and you've never done it before, just to get over the hurdle of like what actually goes into it. I would almost say just apply, just type what you can, spend, if you can just carve out 2-3 hours, type what comes to your mind, and no, maybe you won't place this year, right? You might get an honorable mention, but you'll get that muscle working of going through the process and just feeling what that's like.
It does. That's correct, Josh. It just gets the juices flowing. There's the reason, there's several reasons that we probably don't have time to talk about full in depth, right? But a quick overview, it's really a way to get a fence around your fleet operations and be able to showcase what you do, what's accomplished as a team in fleet. Okay. But it also, for example, if I could, I would like to kind of talk about real quickly here. Staff development is one criteria. So as a new fleet manager back in my Walla days, and I was even a crew chief with the city of West Lynn for 5.5 years. But even at that point, my mind started thinking, how do I become this leader? Who do I network with? Well, get involved with your local fleet organizations, like your NAFA organizations, your Clean Cities organizations. You have a public fleet managers association of some kind. APWA has got fleet. Get acquainted with those and get involved in those meetings, because then you start learning more about fleets and why this is done, why that's done, and that's what I use as a resource to help me get where my knowledge base is. And then your fleet management system, the techs, the staff there are very helpful too in making this accomplished.
Yeah. So I know, obviously, I don't know how long they've been doing 100 Best, but it's been a long time. And you've applied, over several different stops that you've had. Have you noticed a big shift since, like between Tom Johnson and now that NAFA is kind of running it? Like, what changes have you seen?
So that's interesting you brought that up, because I will call myself, and I'm not afraid of it, I'm old school, right? So I've been involved with Tom Johnson and this whole 100 Best Fleets for a lot of them. I know Tom. I knew Tom. I respect Tom. Sad that he departed, but he's got a great legacy in this program. I think what was kind of understood is you fill this out, and then you did your best. But it seemed like there's a change here where if we needed supporting documents, the judges would ask for it. Whereas now, I think with NAFA over it seems like you're able to attach those with your application. And that's something that I just haven't done. That maybe should have, where I could enhance that because I could see it. I mean, that's the nice thing about the whole program is behind the scenes, the judges are fleet people. They recognize when they read me, right? They know me a little bit. They know my operations, but they can read between the lines too, of those missing items. Some are better at the writings than others and probably put more information in. But I think that's the difference that I see is you're able now to kind of attach your analysis, your reports, or whatever you want to add to that. Well, I've got 12 or so that I do on a monthly basis, and I just never thought to attach those as I'm talking about a specific, read my essay, right?
Yeah.
I just don't think about
Like little essay
So,
enhancers, they just help you tell your story a little better too. Well, and I know, so this year the judges, we've got, Steve Saltzgiver and Scott Rude. They've been judging for, some time, and they're going to be back this year. And then new this year, Mike Brenner is kind of stepping into more of an oversight role for NAFA over the program. And Danny Brashear, who, all three of these guys are former Mercury consultants. They've been former fleet managers. Like, they know their stuff. There's going to be the three judges this year. So it's a good panel. And I know one of the things too, if you are curious about it, like, you can ask questions, and you can, after you get your application in and they do the scoring, you can reach out to them and say, hey, why did I score this way? Or how did I score, like, where did you make this decision? Right. And get data around that.
so that's something else that's shifted. Not that it couldn't have been done in years past, but it seems like now that we're open to, hey, that NAFA or the judges are willing to help give some good feedback back
Right.
on the application. How can you enhance? So I think the other part is the mindset. If you're competitive, nature, and I'm not as competitive, so it's not necessarily my goal to be number one. My
Right.
goal is to be recognized and recognize the team in that recognition. So I don't necessarily care where I'm staggered, but it's nice to be recognized for your efforts and what you've achieved.
So when you talk about that recognition, because one of the things I'm always asking is, why would anybody want to do this? Right? Why would somebody want to go through that process, and how does that help them? What are some of the benefits that you've seen having applied and having gotten the recognition on that list?
I believe for how I worked at it, it actually brings the dialogue to the table for my team meeting.
Yeah.
It actually unites the team. It gives team boost morale, and that hey, we are recognized. We know we're good at what we do. We recognize our faults too, and we're going to work on those. And if I could turn the camera and look at my whiteboard here, it has all kinds of goals on that we worked at throughout the year. So this program helps establish those goals too that we want to individually select and work on. So for example, from this is, our revenues were down here a few years ago, and that was because, we talked about that. Why is that? Well, I finally realized that listening to them and looking at that we were not closing our work orders or lines quick enough to generate that revenue back, because our work orders that's our revenue source, is what we bill out parts and we bill out our labor. Well, we were, probably started looking at the KPI for open work orders. We were 40 plus days before we closed work orders down. So we kind of said, well, hey guys, let's take a look at this. And so we worked on that. Now when I run the closed work order report each month over the last couple of years, now we're down in that 30 to less day range. And by doing that, we've increased over $900,000 in our revenue. So that in itself, because of this program and one of those criteria that talks about that, it is how we've been able to, bring up some revenue. And now we're in the good. We're not sitting in the black as we've been.
Well, and I love that it shows, you took a very intentional approach, right? One of the things I'm always trying to teach people is be intentional, right? Is, be proactive and not reactive, and thinking about, like, okay, well, we got this problem. Let's just try to work this number and be really focused on a specific KPI or specific metric. And that's our goal. That's our initiative. And we're going to do, okay, what can we do next? What are the tasks that we can do? And we're just always watching that number. I love that the intentionality behind that is we set a goal and we set a number and we watched it and did what we could to fix it. So
the other one I want to add too, I believe one of the criteria is price, competitive pricing.
okay,
Something I've really focused on and grabbed early on in my career is what we established, or the city or agency or you as a fleet manager establish that shop rates and the rates, through this methodology that works for your organization. Everybody wants to say, well, hey, I can go out there and get oil change cheap by going to Jiffy Lube. Well, that's a true statement, but let's take a look at what a PM is in the shop, and it's a checklist, a bullet point, and you're just not going to get your oil changed and out the door. But what I'm getting at here is competitive pricing, which means every budget cycle, every 2 years, I will go out and do a shop survey of my local vendors, Peterbilt, Freightliner, Ford, Chevy, John Doe, whatever vendor that we use a lot of in the shop, and I'll do a comparison. And when we've done that, it shows that our pricing has been like, we don't have it off the top, but we were 12% lower than the other outfits in the locally. So we were able to show that, hey, we are doing our part. We are doing being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, because we're keeping our rates in check a little below the local market.
Yeah. Does the city do anything or celebrate anything for, like, it's the fleet management agency that you guys rank? Is there any kind of other benefit from a recognition? I'm not going to say notoriety, but that you guys have seen from other departments or from the city itself?
What we do is we get our recognized in our internal newsletter. So if we get recognized, We'll send a little, whatever we get from NAFA or Tom Johnson time, that, hey, this is great. They usually, and I'll send that to the city hall. Hey, we got recognized. That then gets it out to internal. I've even been recognized in front of council once.
Oh, that's way awesome.
One of the judges at the time happened to be close by here, and the first time that we were recognized in that fleet, he came and we presented in front of council and got a recognition out. I took the way out the pizza before that too. So we do recognize that, just like we do birthdays and weddings and newborns and all of that here internally. But it is good to have that pat on the back from others out from the newsletters. Well,
and what does that do for like team morale? You guys get that award, and
it boosts it up, because one of the things we want to do is we're aging. That's going to be, we've got new turnovers and got some retirements coming on. So the question really is, from my team is, would you recommend this place for employment? And yes, they want to. In fact, we partnered with the community colleges here in Clark Community College in Vancouver, as well as Portland Community College over the river in Oregon. And we also have a Cascadia Learning Tech. And we partner with them to bring in interns. I just yesterday had 4 interns that want to come and spend time with my 2 shops, fire shop and here, a couple hours, for their program enhancement, is to shadow with my full-time techs. That brings that awareness in. Hey, you can't, municipality, like, what's that? What do they work on? It's always dealerships, or this or that, without realizing counties and states and municipalities have a fleet. Okay? And it consists of a wide variety of stuff: law enforcement, fire, ambulance, sanitation, recycle, grounds, all this variety of fleet.
Oh, cool. Well, Dan, as we wrap up, kind of a closing argument, any listener who might be on the fence, or maybe this is their first time going into it, any parting advice or words of wisdom for them?
Don't be afraid. Jump out and do it. Pull this out, put it in the word, feed on it, ponder on it, and you will find the direction. I guarantee you will.
You'll get that inspiration, right? Just, you'll find where you need to go and the direction that you're kind of, especially if you're a new fleet manager, and this might be your first foray into the job, and maybe nobody's been along to mentor you, right? Like, this can help with that, right? And if you're watching the video, you can tell, Dan gets a little choked up here, because it makes a difference in the lives of your team, makes a difference in the lives of your people, and it gives you that focus and really inspiration, right, to how you can be a better leader. Because as we say here all the time, right, like, leading fleets, they're built by fleet leaders, right? And you've got to build yourself up in order to do that. So
this has helped build my confidence, I believe.
Yeah.
Tremendously is advanced leader I wanted to be.
Well, Dan, thank you very much for sharing some time with us. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this, and obviously respect you in your career, and what it's meant for our friendship over the years. Look forward to seeing you again next year, and hopefully before that we'll run into you while we're out on the circuit. But
So,
again, thank you on behalf of our listeners and for sharing some of your time with us today. So
thank you all.